John Kent, you've just had the Thurrock Labour Party AGM, and what has been discussed in the AGM?
Well, we've discussed the year that's passed and the year ahead. So we have all of our candidates in place for local elections, we have our new officers of the party, and we're discussing the fact that we are really looking forward to getting out, to campaigning in the run-up to the local elections in May, and then building our campaign to make sure that we return a Labour Member of Parliament for Thurrock.
So taking local first in May, or I guess you've got issues between now and May, when it comes to Thurrock Council. When it comes to the doorsteps from Averley all the way across to Fobbing, are there any particular issues you'd probably be focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, the issues that we're focusing on actually are the issues that people tell us to focus on. So as we're knocking on doors, more and more people are telling us that they're concerned about the increases that we're seeing in crime, increases that we're going to see with the cuts that we've had to the police, 20,000 fewer police across the country. It would be incredible if you didn't have the kind of increases in crime that we're seeing with cuts like that. So that's the number one issue. The number two issue that we get on the doorstep is still that of Alsip Hospital. People know that there's this Conservative plan to close Alsip Hospital with no reasonable alternative in place. And we've seen through the CCG, that's the Clinical Commissioning Group, that the plans are ill thought through and that they're not properly funded. So that's the second issue that comes up on the doorstep. And the third is about homelessness. Thurrock Council is now receiving 5 homeless applications every working day. We're seeing increases in homelessness, whereas homelessness had virtually been eliminated a decade ago. We really need to see that reversed. That's what people are telling us on the doorsteps, and that's what we're going to be campaigning on.
When you're doing that as well, do you as a prospective parliamentary candidate have one eye on a general election?
Of course, my working assumption is that there won't be a general election until 2022. That's what the Fixed Term Parliament Act says. But we have to be ready at the drop of a hat for an election to take place. And I think that we can see the signs that it is actually creeping nearer, that there could well be an election come the spring, a general election come the spring. We're ready for it. We're up for it. We want to get out there and get the message to people that the austerity that we've seen isn't inevitable. The cuts in policing that we've seen don't have to go on. The cuts that we've seen to education, 3 billion cuts from schools up and down the country, underfunding of the National Health Service, increase in homelessness, increase in equality, record poverty. Doesn't have to be like this. There is another way.
We haven't mentioned the B word yet, Brexit. Any reflections on what's happened in Parliament this week, and what do you think is going to happen in the next week or two?
Well, my reflections are that it's just utterly chaotic, that we've had a government led by Theresa May for 2.5 years. It's had 2.5 years to get a proper Brexit strategy and to deliver on a deal that delivers the Brexit that people in this country voted for without actually harming the economic prospects of the country. And she has failed. It's a botched deal. Parliament has given their view on the botched deal. They voted it down by 230 votes. She needs to now go away and come back with a deal that can carry both Parliament, can carry her own party before you start, carry her own cabinet even, and carry the country. Frankly, I think that's beyond her.
And going back here to Thurrock as well, are you able to, when you're a leader of Thurrock Council, is that a record you've had to defend on the doorsteps? Do people come at you about what did you do in those years between 2010 and 2016?
Well, I'm actually proud of many of the things that we did there. We built meaningful numbers of council homes for the first time in a generation. We froze council tax on 3 occasions. We rebuilt the council's finances. Don't forget that the council at that time was overspending by £500,000 every single month. We put that right. We introduced the living wage for all council employees. We did an awful lot of good things. It's not a record that, as you put it, you have to defend. It's a record that we have to shout about because it's a record that can't be touched.
And just we talk about that, there's a budget in Thurrock coming up, and then apparently there's going to be a recommendation of a zero council tax with more cash in Thurrock residents' pockets. That's got to be applauded, hasn't it?
Well, we'll have a look at the details. I mean, one of the things that we've seen so far is that the Conservatives have kind of crowed that the investments that they have, the investments that were made under my administration, by the way, have allowed them to set a balanced budget into the future. They were saying that was a balanced budget for 5 years. They're now saying it's a balanced budget for 4 years. To go along with that council tax freeze that they're announcing, there's something like £800,000 worth of cuts to children's services alone. cuts to the environment and other cuts. So we have to look at the detail. But the bottom line is, I was proud when we froze council tax. I was proud when we cut council tax. I always think it's better if you can leave more money in people's pockets. So we'll have a look at it, and if it can be defended, then we'll support it.
But finally, going back to the prospective parliamentary candidate, if there is, as some papers are saying, a general election on February the 28th, you'd be ready?
Oh, ready, willing, able, absolutely relishing the opportunity to give people in Thurrock that choice between the Conservatives and Jackie Doyle-Price and the Labour Party and me.
Thank you, John, for your time.